Hello everyone and welcome to another Stargate lore video. Today we're going to be discussing the Grace Aliens. So who are the Grace Aliens? They were a race who appeared in the episode Grace, hence why I'm calling them the Grace Aliens as opposed to the Unknown Race, which I think is their official name. And we know basically nothing about them. If you haven't seen the episode, the plot is that while the Prometheus was on its way back to Earth after being stranded, it encounters an unknown alien ship. The situation quickly turns hostile and the Prometheus attempts to hide in a nearby stellar cloud. Sam, who was the only member of SG-1 who was aboard at the time, was knocked out during the chase and wakes up and finds herself alone on the ship. She has some hallucinations, which could be the result of getting a concussion, or the aliens trying to talk to her. In the end, she worked out a deal with the aliens to escape the stellar cloud, which was slowly eating away at their hulls. The crew of the Prometheus will be returned, and they go their separate ways. And this was the last we ever saw of them. We never saw or heard from the Grace Aliens in this episode, unless you believe that the hallucinations were caused by them. The only thing we saw of them in this episode was their ship. Specifically, you could say, their technology. Now I say that because a very popular theory is that these aliens are the Furlings. According to the writers of the show, we have never seen a Furling on screen, only their technology. For a long time, this seemed to be just one of those theories for the show that was never going to get answered until a new series was made. That was until the short story Pleasure Cruise was written. This was found in the first volume of the Traveler's Tales Far Horizons, which is a book that contains a lot of short stories from across both SG-1 and Atlantis. In the short story, Sam once again runs into the Grace Aliens, and this time we actually learn who they are. Well, kind of. And just to rip the bandage off now, no, they appear not to be the Furlings. I won't read the full text to you, but while the George Hammond was on its way back to Earth from a Pegasus, it's attacked by the Grace Aliens. Sam, who was in command of the ship, once again finds herself alone and begins seeing people, though this time with no real head injury to explain them. Eventually she figures that the aliens are using the hallucinations as a form of communication, and one takes the form of Shepard and begins talking with her. We don't know what the aliens call themselves, but we do know they hail from another galaxy. He makes a claim that they make sure those who steal power, aka advanced technology, don't use it to abuse less advanced ones. Sam points out that the Goa'uld got all their technology from the ancients and asks where were they on that one. Not Shepard, yes that's what they call him in the story, says there were problems in their own galaxy that prevented them from stopping the rise of the Goa'uld. It was actually the rise of the Goa'uld that made them adopt the mindset to step in and test younger races, like humans from Earth, who in the past they would have labeled as scavengers like the Goa'uld. As for what the test is, the idea seems to be to see what happens when a race loses their technology and see what they do. With the Prometheus and the George Hammond, they would have disabled the ships, stripping them of their weapons, and see how they reacted. Or I should say, how a single person reacted, since they seems to be they only leave one person behind. Ideally, it seems they want someone who has their finger on the button, but has the right combination of hope, compassion, trust, and love to know not to use their power to act like a god. I'll get more into this later. We learn that if Sam failed the test, though it is more implied, and this story does a lot of implying by the way, the ships would have been destroyed. Sam points out that's a little brutal, but not Shepard assures her they consider themselves protectors of those who can't stand up for themselves. That doesn't really raise the question, but moving on. And that there are powerful races who would abuse their power just like the Goa'uld. They also later claim they don't execute people, so I guess they would have taken everyone off the ship and destroyed it, so there's that. When Sam asks who makes sure they don't abuse their power, we learn something rather interesting. Not Shepard says they have authorities they have to answer to, and that if they overstep, their allies among the great races would let them know. When Sam asks if he means the Nox, Not Shepard says there have always been powerful races in the galaxy, and asks if she really thinks there have only been 4 great races. In fact, Not Shepard kind of implies that their race is older than that of the 4 Great Race Alliance, or existed around the same time. Races that fail the test or are deemed unworthy by the Grace Aliens are crippled of their interstellar capabilities and restrict them to their own planet or systems. In the end, one of the aliens takes the form of the original George Hammond, and they have a sweet little heart-to-heart about Sam's feeling of self-doubt, humanity's potential as a spacefaring civilization, and the possibility of an alliance between the two races in the future. The crew of the Hammond is returned, and both parties leave unharmed. My thoughts. So, I kind of have two opinions about these guys. Starting with the positives, I like the idea they set up of other great races. Given how big the galaxy alone is, heck, the universe, it makes sense there would be other great races, or races that were around the time of the Ancient Alliance who were just as advanced as they were. And something that was brought up in the story was that the Grace aliens are not exactly popular with the other great races for stepping in and testing younger races. This implies that the other great races prefer not to get involved in the matters of the less advanced, which explains why we don't really see them or why they never step in when big threats come along. That said, here are my negatives. First, I don't like the test. Not the idea of testing younger races to see if they would be a threat to galactic peace. No. My issue is with the test in of itself. Like, the idea of taking away a species' technology and seeing what they do? What do you expect them to do? Do you expect them not to panic and freak out? I mean, in the case of the humans test, you show up unexpectedly, seems like you're firing on them, and then take away all their technology. How do you expect them to not be concerned about that? And why only test one person? Like, you're gonna judge an entire race based on the actions of a single individual? Now, they claim they try and pick the best person who kind of sums up their species, but what if the person goofs up and makes a mistake? Are you really gonna condemn an entire civilization to a single planet because one person made a mistake? Or what if the inverse happens? What if the person they choose is super good, but the rest of the race is full of terrible people? I mean, sure, people like Sam and other members of SG-1s are kind of paragons, but they're not the ones in control of the society. Shouldn't you be testing, like, politicians or something?
How many of them are there?
We saw a medium-sized clan. I can't be sure why.
We need to know if we're going to relocate them.
The NID has a proposal before the Pentagon suggesting that when the Salish migrate south, we send another SG team to the planet to continue extracting samples and leave again before the Salish return.
You mean steal it?
Also, while it seems like they test all the new races, it's kind of implied that they only really focus on races who are using technology of other races. So does that mean the Shang get a free card to go be terrible people and do terrible things because they developed all their technology on their own? Like, you can be a threat to the galactic peace and not do it by stealing advanced technology. And this leads to kind of my second point. Where were these protectors of the weak with almost every other threat? Not Shepard references the Wraith and Ori. Were they going to do anything about that? Sure, they give a good reason for not stepping in and stopping the Goa'uld at first, but what was stopping them from dealing with them now? The Asgard Ray will at least try and do something about containing the Goa'uld while dealing with the Replicators. In fact, where were they with the Replicators? If you think about it, the Replicators steal advanced technology in a way, since they find advanced technology, eat it, and use it to make themselves better. Aren't they kind of doing exactly what you're worried the Goa'uld would do? And what about the Lucian Alliance? All their technology they got was from remnants of the Goa'uld Empire, which I don't know if you call it stealing, since they basically just no one was around to take it. But still, they're kind of a threat to galactic peace right now. Where are you on these guys? There's also this weird thing where Not Shepard claims that members of the Four Great Race Alliance would be among those who would step in if they overstepped, but as Sam points out, the alliance of the Four Great Races has pretty much been wiped out. But the Nox are still around, and if you really aren't the Furlings, she gave him an opening to confirm or deny, but he only returned her stare blankly. So overall, I had to kind of say, I'd say I don't really like the idea of this race, to be honest, just because I feel like it creates this whole ripple effect that expands outward into the Stargate universe. Because then it's like, well, why didn't they step in and deal with this? Or why aren't the Great Races dealing with all these problems? So this is one of the few times I would kind of agree with those who tell me they wish the books aren't canon. That being said, I don't really like the idea of decanonizing entire works just because of one bad idea. And the thing is, I think this idea can work if we tweak some of the details. For example, have the problem that kept them in their own galaxy last until around the time that Earth got its Stargate. And also have it where they only learned about the Goa'uld threat very recently because that problem just ended. This would also be used to imply that they're still recovering and can't send their full force to deal with the Goa'uld and other threats. We can also say that it's a big galaxy and they're still going through and meeting all these new younger races. I'd also reorganize the test itself. Have multiple tests with multiple people. Like, imagine, for instance, if in a season of Stargate, these guys kept showing up at random moments and tested key people in SG-1, Stargate Command, and the United States government. Like, say, have an episode where Jack is suddenly teleported to some random planet with a Jaffa soldier and they have to survive together, and we learn that the aliens had did this to see how humans would work with their enemies. Now, that's just something I would kind of take steps to sort of fix this, to be honest. But what do you all think? Do you like the idea of these aliens as there are? Or do you agree with me that with some tweaking, they would fit pretty well into the Stargate universe? Or do you hate this idea, wish the Burks weren't canon, and just wish that these guys are the Furlings? Tell me your thoughts in the comments below and maybe leave a like and subscribe. And remember,
I'm gonna try to save myself with a bubble.
How?
The hyperdrive won't fully engage because of the cloud, but maybe it doesn't have to. If I can dial down the power from the hyperdrive emitter, theoretically I should be able to cause a partial shift in hyperspace, essentially taking the ship out of the cloud space-time. Hopefully just enough to eliminate its effects on subway engine.
Neat.